Every Wednesday, William Henry's Revelations bring you a powerful half hour of information at the cutting edge of reality. Information that you cannot find anywhere else in the world. And now, here's William.
Welcome, everyone. While on our road to freedom, we are pausing this September 11th, 2013, to remember the events of September the 11th, 2001. For some, it is now a sacred day. For others, it marks the day the music died for America. Whatever your personal opinion, and people have highly charged opinions on this question, this issue, one should be aware that a very important chapter is soon to open in this unfolding story. No, sorry, it's not over. It's just beginning. I'm speaking of the National September 11th Memorial and Museum, which received finishing touches as the 12th anniversary of 9/11 approached. The New York Daily News reports the museum, which opened in the spring of 2014, will be housed in the, quote, sacred ground, beneath the place where the Twin Towers once stood, unquote. Artifacts, including 24 large relics already installed, will chronicle the history of the tragic day and explore living in a, quote, post-9/11 world, whatever that is. At Wednesday's ceremony on the 2-year-old Memorial Plaza, relatives again read the names of the nearly 3,000 people who died when hijacked jets crashed into the World Trade Center, allegedly, and the Pentagon, allegedly, near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, allegedly. Readers also recited the 1993 Trade Center bombing victims' names. As the Associated Press reports, over his years as mayor and chairman of the National September 11th Memorial and Museum, Michael Bloomberg has sometimes tangled with victims' relatives, religious leaders, and other elected officials over an event steeped in symbolism and emotion, as AP says. But his administration has largely succeeded at its goal of keeping the commemoration centered on the attack's victims, which is all of us, and their families, and relatively free of political image-making. In that spirit, no politicians or religious people, including the mayor, were allowed to speak last year or will be this year. Things are changing, though. Memorial organizers expect to take primary responsibility for the ceremony next year and say they plan to continue concentrating the event on victims' loved ones, even as the forthcoming museum creates a new, broader framework for remembering 9/11. Quote, as things evolve in the future, the focus on the remembrance is going to stay sacrosanct, unquote, said Memorial President Joe Daniels. In other words, as a holy event, a sacred place, and a sacred ground. And apparently, some religious people can't wait to get their hands on this place. There have been many observers of the events at this holy place who have noticed some very occult, esoteric, and even messianic symbolism being utilized. This appears to be by design. One of these observers is yours truly. The other is Dr. Mark Gray. Dr. Gray has been reading the symbolic tea leaves and language at Ground Zero, as this sacred space is also known, for a number of years. And what is happening at this sacred ground, in his view, could be nothing less than a mega ritual. Now, Dr. Gray and I collaborated on the book Freedom's Gate, the first ever book about the art and symbols of the dome of the U.S. Capitol. He's a chiropractor by day and symbol seeker by night, and he's a really good one, too. A recurring guest on Revelations, we welcome Dr. Mark Gray back to the program. Mark's website is cosmicdoorways.net. Mark, welcome.
William, thank you so much. That was a fantastic introduction. I got goosebumps again. And like you said, searching the symbols by night. I'd like to throw a shout-out to everybody. My search for symbols is definitely lit by William's books, so I suggest everybody go out and get his books, read them. They're absolutely incredible, and from there you can get a language and a vocabulary that will help you see things that are right in front of your face all the time. So thank you for your books, William, And here we are talking about 9/11 and the memorial and the prophecies, the numbers, and the symbols that surround it. It's absolutely incredible.
It really is. And Mark, I just want to say, too, that I think you're the best person I know to talk about the symbolism of Ground Zero with. First, you have a reputation for telling it like it is. Second, our research experience at the U.S. Capitol taught us to be respectful of America and, indeed, the world's holy sites for the reason that blood has been shed at these places or for the ideals they represent. And whether we're at Arlington or Ground Zero, you approach the place, in my opinion, and experience with appropriate reverence, and you really connect with the places in ways most don't. And I think that's important to say.
Well, I know I was reading about the first and second temples that were built in Jerusalem. It was very important for the Jews to make blood sacrifices because life is in the blood. Nothing exists without blood. So on holy ground, you consecrate it by spilling blood. So absolutely, the World Trade Center site is a very holy spot. I know that the United Nations, where it's built in New York City, was actually the largest slaughterhouse in New York City before the United Nations was built there. So a lot of blood was spilled on that spot as well. So yes, it's very important to have the blood. An important thing that you said, they read the names off this morning at the memorial. I remember walking through an Egyptian temple, and the guide said, "You know why the pharaohs write their names everywhere all over the temples?" And we asked why. He said because it was very important, because when the pharaoh's names were read, he believed that he came to life again. So by reading these names at this holy spot where this blood was shed, these people live again. So it's very important.
Very important. And we're going to go from site to site at the memorial, including reflecting absence. We're going to talk about the towers. We're going to talk about all the other symbols that you've been doing such a great job of chronicling and calling our attention to. But first, let's just clear out one of the objections. I've had a short dialogue going on my Facebook page about this. I posted a couple images today, as I know you did. And I got a response. There's usually about two responses to this. First, who cares? It's over. This happened. This is an event that took place a long time ago. It was a dark ritual. It's over. And it's almost the person is saying, please stop talking about it. In fact, the person remarked, we went through December 21st, 2012. Everything's okay now. And part of my response, and I certainly want to get yours, is, well, pardon me, but I think actually we're just beginning this, that the takedown of the towers was only the beginning. We are now seeing the unfolding of what was meant to be revealed there. And in fact, I don't want to get windy here, Mark, but I just do want to put on the table here that I remarked about the movie The Prestige, where we're told that every magic trick, even a dark magic trick, has three parts, or three acts. The first part is the pledge, where something ordinary is shown, a building, a deck of cards, a bird. Then the second part is called the turn, when the magician takes the ordinary something and makes it do something extraordinary. It falls into a pile of powder in the case of the Twin Towers. The bird disappears, whatever. But you don't clap yet, says the character in The Prestige, Cutter, played by Michael Caine. You won't find it because when you go looking for the object, because you're really not looking. You don't really want to know. You want to be fooled, but you wouldn't clap yet because making something disappear isn't enough, he says. You have to bring it back. And that's why every magic trick has a third act, the hardest part, which we call the prestige. In your view, Mark, do you feel as if we're witnessing the prestige in this dark ritual some people know of as 9/11?
I'd like to answer that with a quote from the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus said, "When the two become one, then you will be in the kingdom of heaven." So I saw two towers standing in New York City. I saw them come down. And over the last 10 years, I've watched one tower emerge from the two. So next, as the prestige, I'm waiting for the kingdom of heaven. It's all around me. So the two have become one. It's going to open next year, and we have arrived in the kingdom of heaven. So I think it's very powerful and very high magic, and I like your word mega ritual.
Well, I probably got that from you, I believe, seeing that on your Facebook page a while ago. But let's talk in detail about why we want to put religious symbolism on what we're seeing here. This seems like this has got to be totally out of the box for most people. I mean, in fact, there was a USA Today poll that asked the question, as a result of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, do you think Americans have permanently changed the way they live? Yes, said 61% of the people. As a result of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, have you permanently changed the way you live? Yes, said 40% of the people. Do you consider the 9/11 terrorist attacks to be the most memorable news event of your lifetime? Yes, said 61.5% of the people. I wish they would have asked them what happened on 9/11. What do you feel happened on 9/11, Mark, and what are we witnessing today with the emergence of the 9/11 memorial?
I think something that we need to talk about is the idea of prophecy. And we can look at, for example, the Bible and in the book of Revelation. If we looked at Revelation 9:11, it says, they had a king over them, the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew was Abaddon, and in Greek is Apollyon, the destroyer. And when I looked into that a little bit, I found out that Apollyon, it's not only an angel, but it's also a place of destruction. So Revelation 9:11 talks about an angel and a place of destruction. So I find the numerology there extremely powerful. The other numerological example that is so powerful, it gives me goosebumps every time I talk about it, is the saddest day in Judaism, and it's called Tisha B'Av. And Tisha B'Av is the 9th day of the 11th month. Now, on the 9th day of the 11th month, both of their holy temples, the first and second temple, Solomon's temple and Herod's temple, were destroyed. So, the 9th day of the 11th month, the two Jewish temples in Jerusalem were destroyed. Now, in our modern times, in New York City, on 9/11, our two temples were destroyed. There's a relationship there that has to be examined. If that doesn't give people goosebumps and make them wonder what's going on, then maybe they should get a pulse. The other thing is that when we talk about this place of destruction and this angel called Apollyon, and we enter it into a gematria calculator, and I put a lot of credit into gematria. We have calculators right on the computer you can use. You can enter in words, and it will give you the numerological equivalent. When you enter in Apollyon, it gives you the answer of 110, and that's the number of floors that were in both towers. So we start to get numbers, we start to get symbols, and we start to get prophecy, and they all collide at ground zero.
Where we want to take this conversation, which brings some powerful connective tissue to this conversation, is what happened on September the 11th, 2011, when the 9/11 memorial was opened. This cube-shaped temple that is both a ringer for Isaac Newton's diagram of Solomon's temple and is a ringer for the Kaaba in Mecca. What is going on with that, Mark?
I think that when I talk to people, I find that most people don't realize that the architect of the original World Trade Center site said that he created the World Trade Center to be modeled after the Kaaba in Mecca. Ask most people what the Kaaba is, and they don't know. The Kaaba is Islam's most holy site, and Kaaba means cube. And in Mecca, there is a black cube, and the Muslims face that black cube, I believe, 5 times a day in their prayer, and they focus all of their energy there. Inside of that black cube, there are 3 pillars, very reminiscent of the 2 towers and the new Freedom Tower that's being built now in New York City, the 3 pillars. The Muslims believe that the Kaaba is the center of the world and that the gates of heaven are directly above it. And it is at this point where the sacred world and the profane world collide with each other. To use your word, it's a stargate. So the architect of the World Trade Center modeled the World Trade Center after the Kaaba, which is a stargate or an intersection between heaven and earth. Most people don't know that. It's very important to understand that. And if you go back to the original World Trade Center site, and pull up a picture on the internet, you'll see two towers, and in between the two towers was a golden sphere.
Yes.
And that golden sphere was our version of the black cube at the Kaaba. And it spun one time every 24 hours, and it was made of 52 plates. So it was a symbol of time. In the pictures, you'll see 33 stone tables that surround that sphere. Now, those 33 tables are extremely important because the number 33 is symbolic of transformation. Because Jesus was crucified at the age of 33, ice turns to water at 33, there's 33 vertebrae in the human spine, and there's 33 degrees in Scottish Rite Freemasonry. So when you see the 33 stone tables around the sphere, it needs to mean something to you. Now, that sphere, after the 9/11 attack, was moved down to Battery Park. And there was a runway or a walkway that you go down to approach it. I used Google Earth. I zoomed down on that sphere, and I drew a line from the sphere down the walkway all the way to the Kaaba in Mecca. And the angle of the walkway, which is about 300 yards long, 150 yards, somewhere in there long, it runs directly towards the Kaaba. Now, this is important because Muslims need to know which direction to pray because they must face the Kaaba. So you've been in Egypt many, many times. You'll see in the hotel rooms, there'll be a little marker in the hotel room that you're in that will tell you which way to face towards the Kaaba. So I tell you that if you go to Battery Park in New York City and stand at the gold sphere that once stood at the World Trade Centers and face down the walkway, you will be facing directly towards the Kaaba in Mecca. Now the question is why in the world would anybody continue to connect the World Trade Center site with the Kaaba in Mecca? It boggles the mind.
Especially when the conspiracy theory is that 19 Muslim terrorists hijacked planes into the towers and brought them down.
It makes no sense. And the 9/11 site is designed as an inverted cube. So it's a polar reversal of what we have in Mecca. It's almost as if the 9/11 site and the Kaaba in Mecca are playing off of each other and are energetically charged off of each other. And if you go down to the 9/11 site and talk to people, and if you go to the Kaaba in Mecca, which I never have, and talk to those people, I bet you can feel that energy.
Exactly, and now they're both considered hallowed or sacred ground and are unified by, you have a black cube in Mecca and a black cube in Manhattan now that are directly tied with one another according to this event, or at least the official story of this event. Mark, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about what's going on at the location where the original World Trade Center stood, the foundation, the slurry wall, and its connection with Solomon's Temple. And let's talk as well about One World Trade Center and the meaning of the symbolism of this tower that has replaced the World Trade Center. Mark's website is cosmicdoorways.net. This is Revelations. We'll be right back.
This is Whitley Strieber. The beautiful new 2014 Crop Circle calendar is in the unknowncountry.com store. The calendar retails for $22.95. If you're an unknowncountry.com subscriber, it's $19.95. And while supplies last, purchasers will receive a 2013 Crop Circle calendar as well. Make your collection complete. Get a 2014 Crop Circle calendar, and as long as we have supplies, a 2013 calendar as well. This year's calendar is just beautiful, inspirational. The calendars are made up of special Crop Circle images found by Lucy Pringle over the past few years, and these are particularly beautiful. The crop circles and crop formations grow more powerful, more sophisticated, and more beautiful every day. Go to unknowncountry.com and click on the tab on the right for the calendar.
Some of the most thrilling, mind-opening interviews ever recorded are in the Dreamland Archive. Open your mind to Sir Lawrence Gardner's brilliant vision of the past. Listen to Russell Targ's phenomenal insights about ESP. Be inspired by Dr. Eben Alexander's stunning near-death experience. Listen to an actual recording from a plane as it was attacked by a gigantic flying disc. Be transported to a new level of inner grace with Whitley Strieber's meditations. Enjoy The Communion, Transformation, Majestic, Secret School, and Superstorm audiobooks, and so much more. The unknowncountry.com subscriber section. $3.95 a month to $79 for 2 years. As little as 10 cents a day. Priceless.
This is Whitley Strieber. Go to unknowncountry.com today and start your subscription. You owe it to yourself.
This is Revelations. We're continuing with Dr. Mark Gray. Mark's website is cosmicdoorways.net. Mark, just before the break, we had looked at this site and said, wait a minute, there's unquestionably a visual comparison to be made between the 9/11 memorial, which is called the absence of reflection, and also with the Kaaba in Mecca. And this simply can't be by chance. I mean, I think there were other observers, even mainstream observers, who said, look, reflecting absence, this is exactly like the Kaaba. What in the world were they doing? You would think they would want to stay as far away from something that even could remotely be construed as connected with anything Islamic due to the official story about 9/11. But here it is, hidden in plain sight, as they say, an inversion of the Kaaba in Mecca in Manhattan.
Yeah, it's very strange. The first time that the black cube actually showed up on the 9/11 site was on April 20th, 2008. It took place at the blessing of the ground. The Pope actually came over from Rome. He stands in the basement of Ground Zero on top of a black cube and blesses the new buildings that were going to be built. Now, that date, April 20th, is interesting because, ironically, it was April 20th that Jacques de Molay was initiated as the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. And it's even more bizarre to me that on that same day, April 20th, around the world, Catholics were celebrating the Mass of the Theotemos. Now, Theotemos, Theo means God, Timos is God. So Theotemos is the god of time, or Father Time, also known as Saturn, whose symbol is the black cube. Now, people might say, oh, that's all coincidence, but then I say that also that April 20th, the same day that the Pope stood on the black cube in the basement of Ground Zero, April 20th is the 110th day of the year. Now, the 110th day is important because there were 110 floors in each of the Twin Towers. So the numbers and the symbolism, again, blow everybody out of order. So that was the first appearance of the black cube.
Well, 110, if I may interject too, Mark, is 1/10 is the tithe or sacrifice we are to make to Yahweh as well.
I never thought of that. That's powerful. 1/10. You gave me goosebumps again. Well, okay. Yeah, 1/10. 1/10. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and Saturn is tied to the followers of Yahweh who believe that one day Saturn will be restored as a pure symbol of Yahweh and of Christ returning in his millennial kingdom, which will feature the Temple of Ezekiel, which is arguably another layer of the whole 9/11 memorial. It appears to be an homage to what Ezekiel saw in his prophecy.
Yeah, definitely. There's if you type in the third temple, Ezekiel's temple, in a Google search, you'll pull up pictures by Isaac Newton, maybe the world's greatest mathematician, who in 1728 he studied the Bible and drew what he thought would be the most accurate representation of Solomon's new temple that was going to be built so that the Messiah could come. And that temple is an exact replica of reflecting absence. And bizarrely enough, if you go to Gematria calculator and type in the words reflecting absence, the number 888 will come up. So I don't know how the number of Christ, and it's the number of Christ in Greek. So I don't know how that you would name the 9/11 memorial reflecting absence and still have its geometrical numerical counterpart come up as 888. It would seem almost impossible to me, but it was performed and it was done. And it's extremely powerful. But I do suggest to everybody just type in Solomon's Temple, the third temple, and you won't get a picture of anything less than the 9/11 memorial.
Yeah, Solomon's Temple, Isaac Newton, you'll get his line drawing. And he, of course, was one of the great prophecy watchers of all time, perhaps, who trained his keen mind on alchemy, prophecy, as well as the secrets of gravity. Now, Mark, the other thing I just want to inject in here that really has always fascinated me about the whole 9/11 event is its correlation to Jewish legend about the return of the Messiah, which calls for the assembly of a kit of tools that includes the Ark of the Covenant and other tools that will be utilized by the Messiah. There's the book, Louis Ginsburg's book, Legends of the Jews, presents what's effectively a to-do list or a checklist for the Messiah, the things that he will do, which includes getting this kit and then grinding the mountains of the Holy Land to powder. And when I first heard that, I thought it might have had something to do with manna, because one of the other things on the Messiah's to-do list is to manufacture the manna, the sacred or cosmic food that fed the Israelites during their wandering in the wilderness. And then 9/11 happened. And I know people have described those tall buildings as being like mountains, and America is viewed in prophetic traditions as the new Holy Land, the new Atlantis. And I looked at that and I thought, oh my gosh, people talk about the Ark of the Covenant as being some kind of a directed energy weapon. Is it possible somebody really did assemble the Ark of the Covenant and utilize it to grind the mountains, the World Trade Center towers, to powder as a demonstration of the fulfillment of a prophecy? And now we're discussing the symbolism of what is laid on the ground after that event, and it's a perfect match for the Temple of Solomon and the Kaaba. And you look at this and you go, wow, there's either something really powerful going on here, or, we're just having a good time talking about stuff that's really just too far out there for the average person to get a hold of. But then I read your posts on it, Mark, and you take us into the basement of the World Trade Center, which is considered to be sacred ground. And there we find this really extraordinary new museum is developing, and part of what it's anchored or focused on is the slurry wall, which was part of the World Trade Center's original foundation. Tell us what you found about this slurry wall and a connection to Solomon's Temple.
Well, the interesting thing with the slurry walls, first off, it's gigantic. I think it's going to be extremely impressive to walk down in there and see it. But it's actually the last retainer wall in the World Trade Center. They kept a piece of it. But the important thing about that slurry wall is when you look at it, you're immediately reminded of the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. But
no question. It will be a Wailing Wall. People will come there and will no doubt have deep emotional experiences there.
Yeah, absolutely. And an interesting thing is that slurry wall, if you were to look at a map, is placed against and holds back what is called West Street. So West Street rides right on the top of the slurry wall. Well, if you were to go into Jerusalem and say, could you direct me to the Wailing Wall, someone might say, do you mean the Western Wall? So the Western Wall is the last remnant in Jerusalem of the wall that surrounded Solomon's Temple. And it's one of the most sacred sites in Judaism. It's actually believed in Judaism that if you pray at the Wailing Wall, it's exactly like praying before the throne of glory, because the gate of heaven is there. It's the wall that is left that was closest to the Holy of Holies. So it's extremely important that we have this comparison that the slurry wall is holding back West Street at our temple complex, and if you were to go to Jerusalem and go to the Temple Mount and go to the Western Wall, you would find in Judaism what they believe one of their most sacred holy sites or a gateway that leads to the throne of glory.
Mark, I remember when we were in the basement of the U.S. Capitol talking with Dr. Barbara Walden, and she told us, first off, there are mysteries about the Capitol that are unsolved. And you have to get a sense, don't you, Mark, that people in Manhattan, maybe in the mayor's office, I don't know, other important offices, are looking at some of the symbolism and either completely oblivious to it or are going, yeah, we really do need to keep the religious types away from this thing because it's so overtly esoteric, so occult, so religious that they're going to begin to use this place as a temple.
It's always the question that comes up, is this by design or is it by grand design by God? Is it by accident and people don't know what they're doing and they just create these things through instinct and subconsciousness? Or are they sitting down in planning boards in the highest skyscrapers in New York City and designing things perfectly in secret? I don't have the answer to that.
Not skyscrapers, Mark, not any skyscraper. We're talking about the skyscraper of a modern history where the Voltaire-Fassi lightning strike moment of modern history occurred that forever has changed our world.
Yeah, it absolutely changed the world. And, what most people don't realize is when they look at the new building, which at one time it was called Freedom Tower, no more. Right. To call it Freedom Tower is old news. It's actually the One World Trade Center. It was renamed. So I find that interesting that we're looking at the One World Trade Center. And what they did in the architecture is they actually took, if you look from above, they took the two World Trade Centers that were destroyed and combined or morphed them into one. They took one World Trade Center and turned it 45 degrees so that when you look from above, the new One World Trade Center actually has 8 points. So it's 8-sided. Now that thing, that object, that symbol is from above very important because it's the most important symbol in Islam. I don't know if I pronounced this right, but it's something like Rub el-Hizb. And it's actually the symbol of one of the divisions of the Quran. So when you read the Quran, you can divide it into different portions, into 30 different portions, and then it can be divided again and divided again. And one of the portions' symbols is the World Trade Center site itself. So it's this 8-pointed star. You find it all over the mosques around the world. But in our regular geometry class, you would find that this 8-pointed star is also what we call a square antiprism. And a square antiprism is interesting because a prism turns white light into many colors of the rainbow. So this square antiprism of the new building is actually going to take all the different facets of the world and convert them into reverse back into one. I actually like to think of it as what's called a reverse Tower of Babel.
That's absolutely incredible. As I interrupted there, it was Isaac Newton who discovered that prism effect.
I didn't think of that.
And all of the colors come back into white light. When they all become one, they dissolve into white light. And furthermore, yeah, you're right, that 8-pointed star, very important. That is also a symbol of the order of Melchizedek as well. And of course, Jesus, as the priest forever after the order of Melchizedek, would have also used that 8-pointed star as in his symbolism as well. So, gosh, we could go on all day about this, Mark, and I wish we could. I think the point we've made here, though, to answer the comment that we began with, is that 9/11 is not over. It's just beginning, isn't it?
It's absolutely just beginning. And I think that once that building's built, I think that once we can get down into the memorial, and we should point out at this point, too, that one of the most important things in the museum are going to be these 2 tridents that people are going to see when they walk inside of the memorial. And, you can't help as a symbologist, if you open up any symbol book and look up the word trident, you'll find different gods that are related to the trident, like Hades, Pluto, Neptune, Poseidon, and the Christian devil. They're all gods of the underworld. And as you pass these 2 giant tridents, which were 2 steel girders from the original Twin Towers, You're going to pass these two girders that are some 70 feet tall, 7 stories, and you're going to go down into the underworld, an escalator flight down into this underworld, into this abyssy world of the past, of death, of the future, of memories, of the Wailing Wall, of something called the Last Column. There's going to be many things down there and a lot of emotions, and it's all going to be trapped down in this pit. I think it's going to be extremely powerful. Something to think about is that one of the most powerful gods that carried those tridents was the Hindu god Shiva. And what it represents to Shiva is that trident has the power to destroy the 3 worlds. It has the power to destroy the physical world, the world of the forefathers or the past, and it has the power to destroy the world of the mind. And in the story of Shiva, it says that these 3 worlds will one day be destroyed by Shiva and his tridents, and then it will be turned into a single, non-dual plane of existence that will be pure bliss.
Wow. Well, that absolutely gives us something hopeful to focus on, Mark, that this memorial, this temple, when fully operational, which it appears it will be fully operational beginning in the spring of 2014, could be a tuner of cosmic bliss. That is really an awesome thought to close with and to think about. And Mark, I really want to thank you so much for taking time out of your hugely busy schedule here to talk with us about this and to help us to understand the language of symbolism at the 9/11 Memorial. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you.
Thanks a lot, William. I appreciate it. Good talking to you.
And we'll be calling on you again, I'm sure, as this story unfolds, and we'll certainly look forward to that. This has been Revelations. Thank you all for listening. See you next time.
Attending a William Henry presentation is unforgettable. Keep up with his schedule at williamhenry.net. You've been listening to William Henry's Revelations on Dreamland Radio. Next Wednesday, another cutting-edge revelation from William Henry.